Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. Thought I would talk a little bit about WebKit again, since it's been a while. So this is a story about when I was a little boy in WebKit land, and I was working at Nokia at the time. And at Nokia, that's where I got my first job working on WebKit, and it was for the Qt WebKit port. And I had done work on KHTML before in the KDE project, but it was never professional, and I was kind of learning C++ at the time, so a lot of it was kind of not great. But I fixed bugs and made some cool things, so whatever, it still counts. Anyways, there's this thing in the WebKit project where there are like two levels, I guess, of contributor that are officially recognized. So there's like the everyone, and then once you get 10 patches accepted, then you can be nominated for commit access to the source tree. And then there's like a little nomination process, and then if nobody objects against it, and you have, I think, two people, if I recall correctly, is two people have to say that, yeah, that's fine to give this guy commit access, then you get it, and then you are officially a WebKit committer. And then I think, what is it, after like 100 patches, and like, I think there are some requirements on the patches that they need to be like meaningful, not just like spelling fixes and stuff. But if you've done like 100 or so good patches, and you have demonstrated good communication skills and good judgment, then you can be nominated for WebKit reviewer status, which is like the second level status, where you have the right to review other people's patches and say like, oh yeah, this patch is good, this should be included in the source tree, versus you can also say like, this patch is not good. And those states are called like review plus and review minus, or R plus, R minus, and everyday language around WebKit. So when I started at Nokia, I didn't have any access to the tree, so first step was to get commit access, which I feel like I got pretty quickly. I'm a pretty fast worker, although I was not as fast back then as I am today, but it took a little while, and then I had commit access. But then I remember that like it really felt like a goal to get reviewer access, because we were like a small port of WebKit in the Qt team, and because you always had to get the approval of a reviewer to get your code in, then it was important for a small port to have reviewers, because that meant that you could like develop your port and do stuff without having to like ask an outside reviewer from another company who really doesn't care about your port for review, right? So it was important to our team and to me and to everyone around Qt WebKit that we get more people with review access, so that we would have more autonomy in the project. So I remember I really wanted to get that, and I was I'm trying to remember like what kind of work I was doing back then. I think one thing I was doing a bunch of was like looking at HTML specs and trying to work out like, are there some things that we are not doing according to spec, and if so, can I just fix them so that we follow the spec? And I remember I had this little bit of a tunnel vision on that there, and I made these patches that made WebKit indeed conform to the specification, but it might not have matched like what other browsers were doing. So the web is kind of peculiar in that way, because the specifications for the web, like HTML and CSS and those, they are in like a hybrid state between descriptive and prescriptive, because on the one hand, they describe the web the way that it should be, but also they describe the web the way that it actually is. And in the case where you have like the spec says one thing, but then all the browsers, they actually do something differently. As long as they are doing it differently but the same way as each other, then very often you just want to update the spec and not and change the browsers to conform to the spec. So it is a bit of a strange place. But when I was gunning for reviewer access or reviewer status, I didn't really have this nuance in my head, or I didn't understand this. So I was just trying to make all these patches that would make WebKit do what the spec said, and I thought that was making good work. But some of it, I understand now, of course, was like, not really the right thing to do. And of course, I was told in code review that like, oh well, I'm not sure we should do this. What do the other browsers do, and stuff like that. And you can kind of tell when a browser engineer is hesitant about something. Then that's when he'll start asking questions like, well, what do the other browsers do? And like, can we reach consensus with other implementations or whatever? Just like this whole skepticism dance. Anyways, eventually I had like well over 100 patches, and somebody nominated me for review access. I don't remember who it was, but thank you, whoever you were. And I couldn't see it because the conversation was like in this private mailing list for reviewers only, because like only existing reviewers can nominate new reviewers. So I couldn't see what they were talking about. But eventually my nomination went through, and I got access to this list. And I got in there, and of course I was super curious about how my nomination had gone. So I opened the thread about it, and then I found that like there was this little discussion there about how they had seen me like doing these patches that seem sort of maybe not in the best judgment, like that I don't understand this nuance that between like what the specification says and like what the web is really about, or something like that. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it's been years, but it was basically about that. And I remember feeling like, I don't know, like hurt, I guess, because I don't know. It was like it was hard for my ego, I think, and I had such an inflated ego at the time for no real reason. I just it was just full of air, and I think it was for many years. Like whenever someone said something good about me, I would just take that and run with it, and I ran too far every time. And it wasn't until much later in life that I learned I learned to calm down with like if someone says something nice about me, then that doesn't mean that I have to go into like party mode, right? I don't know. It was a bit of a character defect. But thanks God that we go and get older, all of us, so that we can be free of these things, hopefully. Anyways, I was hurt about that, but I had to accept it, and I was happy that I got nominated and accepted. So I had review access. And then, of course, at first I tried to like use my new powers, in moderation, but that didn't last very long because I got a little excited. And I had a friend who was working on WebKit at the time at another institution, and he had a patch that he wanted to get in, and he was like struggling to get someone to review the code. And I figured now that I have review access, I can review her code. So it was like this code that I had no idea about. I never looked at it before. I had no idea how it worked. So, but I didn't care because like my friend needed a review, right? And I just went there and looked over it and checked the spelling of everything like a complete idiot. And I just said like, oh yeah, this is probably good. Let's just put it in there, and I put my little R+ on it, and the code went in. And then a few days later, someone who actually understood this code showed up, quite upset, and removed all the changes and said like, look, this should never have gone in. Like, what the heck are you doing, dude? Like, you don't understand this code. Why are you reviewing it? There started this discussion about like how maybe the review access should be like granular somehow, so that like you can only review in certain subdirectories or modules or whatever. And boy, did I feel silly. Damn, I felt so fucking stupid then. Like I really fucked up. I was ashamed of myself because I knew that I'd done the wrong thing. Although it was probably like explicitly stated somewhere that reviewers are expected to only review stuff that they understand. But I'm not sure if it said that anywhere or if it was just implied, and like I should have understood that. But I just had this stupid idea that I just wanted to help my friend. So it turned out like that. And actually, I guess that was the thing that made me calm down with the reviews. So it was a good learning experience. It's good to get your ego checked every now and then, especially when it grows a little too fast, and you gotta like pop that balloon and blow yourself a new one. Because the guy who showed up, Dave, he had every right to be upset because I was completely out of line, just saying that like, oh yeah, of course the project will accept this code that I don't understand, and is totally not right. Very silly. Anyways, guess I just wanted to share that little story. So thank you for listening to it, and thanks for hanging out with me on the commute. I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.